But if you're the listener, it might give you a few problems. So how many do we have here? Do we have 15, did we say?
I think there's more. I know there's more.
17. I mean, we've got an odd number. We need to pair up, and I'll give you a packet. Okay? Pair up with somebody. Pick the person who is the speaker and the other one who's the listener. You turn your backs to each other, and the communicator, the speaker, is then going to describe how to put the puzzle together without giving out what the shape or what the final product should look like. And we'll just pass these around. I'll divide these up so they go around a little faster. We've got 10 sets here, so yeah, pick a partner, pair up, and we'll begin to work. What were some observations or experiences from this little puzzle that we had done? You tell them 4-piece puzzle, put it together according to specifications. Any observations, comments? That says it all.
Well, it's communication skills, which is very necessary.
And when you're restricted in what you can communicate, that creates another layer of challenges, doesn't it? I got to hand to this team, I thought there was only one way to make an A with those 4 pieces, but they came up with another way. I mean, it looked like an A. It wasn't the way the puzzle's supposed to be. We'll give them extra points for creativity.
I would say another big thing that I think with ours was getting on the same page, and I think that's very important in what we do, at soft skills. It's getting on the same page, because I can call it one thing, she can call it another, but when she said the one piece looked like a boat, that really helped us out, because then, okay, now how do we orient the boat, the big side on this side? And once we got on the same page, we were able to get it pretty quickly after that. And I think that's with soft skills, with communication in general, getting on the same page and speaking the same language is really one of the biggest things, biggest keys.
And maybe I'm showing my age too, but the generation that's coming into the workforce too, they're in the texting and everything else, and in communication skills, at least speaking skills. Aren't there, at least when I'm interacting with them. Maybe this is something I can start getting them to think, how do we communicate and get our points across in an effective manner? And that's one of the purposes behind this puzzle. It's not just limited to younger people. Older people, when they take this puzzle, they find out it's a bit of a challenge trying to say something that the recipient can understand and then put the pieces together. And a lot of times they never do put the pieces together. We'll give them about 10 minutes and they just throw their arms up and says, I give up. But several of you did it, and like I said, we had a new way of making an A. I'll have to remember that. Any questions on what we covered in Module 1? This is just, again, get the students just generally acclimated to what manufacturing is, how diverse it is, the opportunities under each of those different types of manufacturing within driving distance of where they may live. Just give them a general snapshot of the whole manufacturing industry.
Is that information tested at the end?
Some. They would need to understand, give some examples of some sub-industries or understand sub-industries. Just to give you an understanding of how the exams are laid out, it's 100 total points. There's about a third of them are multiple choice. Another third are short answer, where they need to understand something a little more in depth. With multiple choice, you can maybe do some deductive reasoning and come up with an answer. And then the last third will be math, calculating math problems. Next module, this is safety, and it justifies having its own module. And before we actually delve into the program, you might have seen this commercial, but I actually use this whenever I teach the class, and a couple of the other teachers, they've used this as well. We'll just spend 10-15 seconds. We don't have audio in here, unfortunately. Unless there's... I thought we had...
Are those speakers turned down?
Well, that's what I was thinking. We don't have the speakers up?
It looks like it's on, but I can't see if it's turned down or not.
Let me look here in the lower right part.
Sound at the bottom.
Yeah, you're out.
Oh, yeah, here we
You're
go.
out, but
It's all the way at the bottom.
yeah, there you go.
Let's see if that works.
It's gonna be loud.
Yep.
Sorry about that.
You know, that little 10, 15-second commercial, I've used that to generate a lot of conversation on a manufacturing setting. I'll ask them, based on what you were learning in Module 1, is this a modern manufacturing workplace where you got teamwork and interacting from supervisors to workers, and you strike up a pretty good conversation. And then the safety issues, the empowered workforce. The floor staff, they were just letting everything go all over the place. Peanut butter was getting injected anywhere but in the jars. The labels were not making it onto the jars. You had the goat with the lockout tagout violation there. He's walking on a conveyor belt. That could get you fired. They said that, just sort of take a light-hearted look at manufacturing, but we use this just to strike up a conversation and get them to think a little bit, and it's pretty effective. Again, if you've got something in this type of a vein to incorporate in your class, you're welcome to do that as well. But this was something, and when we first did this, I don't think that commercial was quite as prevalent on television as what it is now. Before, this was the first time most people saw it, and you get past the humor element there when they stop laughing, then you get serious. But now they've seen it before, and so you can get right down to the nitty-gritty of the class. So Module 2, this is safety in the workplace. Number 1, don't hire goats. But safety, as we touched on earlier, it's taking on a greater role. We're in a litigious society, and if you have serious workplace accidents or even deaths, and those do occur sometimes, it affects your profit margin. It can make the difference between being able to exist anymore, depending on what kind of a problem that you have. And injuries, they don't just represent the litigious part of it, but if you have an injured worker, that's lost productivity, it's lost time. You got to find a sub to take that person's place. It might involve workers' compensation. So there's just a lot of different things that fall under safety and its impact on businesses, including manufacturing. So what Module 2 focuses on, identify the agencies which are concerned with safety in the workplace, and also emphasize that safety is everybody's concern. It's not just the company. They need to provide you the PPEs, and they need to assure that your workplace is safe and so forth. Everybody has a role in it, and we'll delve into that. Different safety practices that employers and employees can use. Some documentation that's used in the safety process. We'll focus on things like material safety data sheets, things along that line. And then also the ability to identify hazardous material symbols. Even entry-level people, they might need to understand what certain symbols mean and what you should do if you come across that. And again, falling back on my experience with UPS, they weren't very hazardous materials, but you did have hazardous material labels on some of the packages that were delivered, and you needed to understand the procedure, where you load it on the car, how it gets loaded, and things along that line. Safety in the workplace. Everybody likes to tout this sort of thing. You go to a lot of workplaces, they'll tell you how many consecutive days without a serious workplace accident. But again, who's responsible for safety in the workplace? It's everybody. And, your students, it's good that they know that they have a role, but also understand what the employer's role is. First, the employers, they need to protect their people, protect the equipment, and then produce the product. That should be the priority list for employers. We're going to be covering some regulatory agencies that are concerned with the area of safety. Interestingly, those top 3, the federal agencies, they all were created about the same time back in the early 70s. OSHA, NIOSH, EPA, those were all created back in the early 70s. We just had a lot of different in levels and in numbers of workplace accidents, and finally, they said something needs to be done, and so the creation of OSHA, NIOSH, EPA, and then state agencies came around as well. Does anybody know what OSHA stands for? We throw this question out to the students in the tests, and if I had a nickel for every time a student tells me that the OS in OSHA stands for Ohio State, I could probably be retired by now. But anybody know what OSHA stands for? Yeah, Occupational Safety and Health Administration. And what they're concerned with, healthful working conditions for people. And you don't like to have OSHA, a lot of times they come to your place after an accident, although they will do audits, doing preventive type of things. But a lot of times you hear about OSHA coming to a workplace because there had been an accident, and they're going to scour, come up with the root cause of the problem, see if there was any neglect or any other systematic problem with it, and then you could face some penalties on account of it. They're devoted to workplace safety, and again, this was created in response to the growing number of people who were severely injured or killed on the job. NIOSH, don't need to ask you what that stands for. It's right there on its logo, but it's the National Institute on Occupational Safety and Health. Unlike OSHA or EPA, they are not an enforcement agency. What they do is they conduct studies on causes of workplace injuries and illnesses, and they are not an enforcement agency like the others that we're going to be talking about. EPA, we've got it at the federal agency. We've got a state EPA as well. And what they're concerned about are air, water, land, the conditions, whether they're healthy to be exposed to. And again, a lot of times if you have EPA coming around to your business, that's not good news. They do some proactive things, but a lot of times they're called to a site in response to a complaint or an actual accident. And again, they will investigate and they will determine the people who were at fault, if any, and there would be penalties that are levied accordingly. State regulatory agencies, in Ohio we call it EPA. Michigan, they have a corresponding agency, but they call it, I believe it's the Department of Environmental Health, serving essentially the same thing. One of the things that is stipulated, and it's good for students to know this, is that your state agencies need to have regulations at least as effective as the federal agencies. What they're doing this in part anyway is to prevent states from lowballing each other in the effort to retain or attract businesses. If they allow this to happen, they can say, well, we'll look the other way on your discharges in the water, and that'll save you a ton of money, and try to swoon people to come to their state to locate. They don't want to get into a race to the bottom. So that's one of the stipulations that they set at the federal level, is that your state agencies must be at least as effective as the federal standards. Okay, employer responsibilities. They've got a number of responsibilities in the workplace. Number one, they've got to provide safety and health controls. We actually have that in this integrated systems program that we're going to be looking at in the afternoon.